moments with you, and hopefully you can take away some practical ideas. So I think we have an opportunity to role model and lead the way beyond a state of paralysis or overwhelm to genuine healing and reconnection and action. And so when I originally wrote the paper, I had no idea what the rest of the papers would be. And so in light of that, I have some regrets. This is going to be much broader, I suppose, than what the paper abstract would indicate. So in this end, I sort of offer a final segment of my presentation. We have time is a final session of Te Pūtau today to brainstorm more broadly what we have learned through this conference and where we go from here. So I just invite you to arrive. I'm just going to run you through. We're going to have a short meditation. I'm aware that you might be feeling a little lack of anxiety about the topic of racism, and that's perfectly normal and understandable. So I invite you, if that's happening for you, to let your eyes track around the edge of your screen in front of you, and then focus out beyond you into the room behind you, and then back here, and just notice, there's no one else in the room from here with you there. You are safe where you are. Okay. So just getting comfortable, whatever works for you. Closing your eyes or dropping your gaze, breathing slowly, taking a long breath in and a slow breath out. And again, a deep breath in, inhale, and a long, slow, deep exhale out. Using awareness of the breath to anchor you in this present moment. Letting your breath return to its natural rhythm and just noticing the body itself. Notice how much and how often you benefit from each part of the body, how it serves and protects you, how it cares for you and gives you a safe place to call home. And now starting at the top and working our way down, bring your attention to your head, your face and throat. Thanking your skull for providing a safe shell for your brain, which provides never-ending complex function and coordination. Your nose for smell and breathing life in and out. Your ears for listening. Your eyes for taking in the world. Your tongue and mouth for tasting flavor and texture. Your voice for speaking your truth. And your mind for making sense of it all. Now dropping your awareness to the shoulders, arms, wrists, hands and fingers, focusing on how a single finger moves and thanking it for a sense of touch with the world. Thanking your hands for holding precious things, your arms and muscles and joints for your ability to reach for things and to hug. Rest for a moment in the sensation of gratitude for all that you have, and compassion for others who may not be able to enjoy all these functions of the body as you do. And now tuning into your torso, chest, belly, the back, recognizing this torso that is built to protect the most vital organs inside. Thanking the lungs for breathing in fresh air, noticing the miracle of each breath right now, and over 20,000 times a day, every day of your existence. Thanking your heart for beating and transferring blood around your body, bringing health and love and life itself. Your belly for digesting food. Your vital organs for all your body's housekeeping functions, each operating in harmony with another to bring this experience right here and right now. Feeling grateful for all of this that's occurring without you even needing to be aware. It simply happens, all this inner care, organically. And so feeling the gratitude for the signals in your body that might not be faring too well, that tell you to take better care, to maybe rest more, or to slow down. And now shifting awareness to the pelvis, the buttocks, the hips, legs, knees, feet and toes, thanking them for the balancing and supporting structure for you to stand tall in relation to the world and see a wide perspective. Thanking them for giving you the freedom of movement and taking you to many wonderful places, connecting you with Mother Earth. And finally, connecting with the largest organ of all, your skin. Thanking your skin for helping you to feel your life, for letting you feel a warm breeze or a trickle of cool water, to feel the texture of sand on a beach or the soft fur of a pet, to feel the gentle caress of touch with another being. I'm grateful for your skin that brings some of you many unseen benefits in how you navigate the world, freeing up the energy of your body and mind to be creative and to reach your full potential. And now bringing your focus back out to thank your body as a whole, taking a few moments to treasure the gift of this vehicle you have been born with. Noticing with gratitude, this body is a teaching moment, a pathway to opening your heart and becoming more present and aware. You are exactly where you need to be. You are in your unique and amazing body. This is home. And now gently coming back as you're ready into the room or space, opening eyes, maybe giving a little shake or stretch. And now I'm going to start sharing some slides and talk you through what I'll be talking about today. Yeah. Okay. So today's session, I'm going to be discussing the intersectionalities between the climate crisis and things like racism, white supremacy. We're talking about the nature of racialized trauma as an embodied trauma and the effectiveness of mindful, body-centered approaches. Then move to talking about the pilot workshops that I did with another facilitator last year, all around a theme of head, heart, and action. And then we'll sort of have a chance to kind of do some brainstorming of ideas for ongoing action, both in this space and in the wider climate space. And so I'll pause a couple of times and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to do some more exercises for you to get a personal experience of this work. And if I've got time, I'll show you a video. Okay, so I've kicked off this session's title in the kind of Eurocentric language of psychotherapy, but at its heart, there is a simple truth. We are all interconnected at different system levels. We are at one with our mind, body, spirit system, within ourselves, in our relationship with each other, and in our relationship with the earth and all living things. I thank previous speakers for the valuable insights that they have already shared about the interconnection between the climate crisis and racism, particularly Māori speaking to the harms of colonisation, including the separation of mana whenua from the land they whakapapa, and the threatened loss of taonga like Mātauranga Māori that are so important to us all as we struggle to regain balance in our relationship with the earth. So I see connections across multiple ideologies as a braided river of white supremacy, all flowing in the same direction, combining to create an increasingly inequitable society and environment in crisis. Similarly, actions by each of us in these different domains can be mutually reinforcing. Addressing white body supremacy through anti-racism efforts also challenges white capitalist supremacy, white neoliberal supremacy, and white ecocide supremacy. And at an evaluation conference earlier this week, I've been a bit busy, we were talking about the climate and social equity as well. And I presented there on how we can look to the shared underlying values across climate, racism, capitalism, and so on, to move us from white supremacy culture characteristics such as individualism and perfectionism to things like collective care and well-being, equity and interdependency, sustainability, resilience and adaptation, and intergenerational stewardship. And our hope is that this gives a sense of vision. So although that we might be working something like anti-racism, which provides a more immediate feedback loop, I guess, because by nature we as humans are wired for social connection. In doing this work, we're equally, hopefully, healing our relationship with the planet as well. Tina Nata explains these braided links of white supremacy. Let's go back to this one for a second. In her blog as a non-plastic Māori. And there's a wonderful podcast interview where she explains our history and how colonialism is embedded in the psyche of all of us. We're all infected by the sense of entitlement to extract from bodies and places for profit, and how today's issues of corporatisation, oil extraction, waste and pollution, Māori inequities, and racism are all tied to the same historical origins of white supremacy, originating from the papal bulls in 15th century Europe. White supremacy beliefs are embedded throughout our institutions and culture and underlying beliefs and values. And we can't leave it at the door and separate personal and professional. The fields of evaluation and psychotherapy, for example, are also infected by white supremacy. For example, in our dissecting labels and narrow boxes that limit an open view of multidimensional beings, not necessarily fully embracing the connections and wider identity to things like hapu or iwi, the whenua in the land, and wairua, our spirit. So sometimes we are just unknowingly complicit in maintaining through silence and a supposed neutrality, a perpetuation of white supremacy ideology. And I guess this creates this tension that we can't both do no harm and remain ignorant of our privilege and unprocessed pain. Manya Danishpur calls on therapists to own this and step up to practice a social and environmental justice-oriented psychotherapy, to acknowledge with clients the systemic inequities that they have to navigate, including racism, and to actively advocate on their behalf in the public policy arena. But white supremacy is invisible on the surface. As Albert Einstein said, the fish will be the last to discover water. So rather than asking, am I racist? The more accurate question is, how is racism embedded in each of us? In the same way, white supremacy embeds in us a numbness to what human behaviour is doing to the environment, its biodiversity, and the climate. We are taught by white supremacy to be oblivious to our unearned privilege and to run away and shut down from uncomfortable conversations or truths. We have elaborate defences and strategies of denial, deflection, diversion, and so on. And this is what happened at the beginning of my journey last year when I was confronted in my local swimming pool of all places with the racist prejudices of a fellow swimmer, a lovely Pākehā woman in her 70s. And so I was shocked, if not surprised, by a bunch of the things that she said in conversation that I'd started about Black Lives Movement and state removal of Māori newborn babies. And I had a number of reactions in that moment. I mean, first I was caught like a possum in headlights. What do I say? Do I maintain that polite silence or not? On the other hand, I felt kind of judgmental and appalled, wanting to argue the case and say, no, you're wrong. Just as I had with my family growing up. I mean, these things she was saying weren't new to me. It was just, I hadn't heard them for so long. And it was my privilege to have created a life where I was in a bubble, not exposed to this on a daily basis. At the same time, I felt compassion and realized she was a product of generations of racism being passed down, her behaviour simply reflecting the deeper values and beliefs of white supremacy, an unknowing pawn in an invisible chessboard. So I came home wanting to know what I could do. And that started my journey towards creating these pilot workshops. I Googled, I read, started attending online webinars at 2 in the morning that were being run out of the United States and Canada mainly. I couldn't find anything on Aotearoa beyond the same kind of treaty education work that I'd done in the 90s, and in the few one-off workshops on how to talk to your racist uncle. And I wonder if a reason for this gap in Aotearoa is, at least in part, our reluctance to scratch beneath the surface of New Zealand's reputation for harmonious race relations and our clean green image, for that matter, neither of which stand up to scrutiny too far. And so listening and reading and writing, the direction from people of colour was that the answer lies in white people doing the mahi on ourselves, or in fact, working on our own shit. We are the people in positions of power and privilege to change the systems of oppression and take our foot off the neck of people of colour. We need to own it for ourselves. As James Baldwin said over 50 years ago, the Negro problem would dissolve if white people could learn to understand and love themselves and each other. And often it is the wisdom expressed by Indigenous peoples about racism and the environment. For example, an Amazonian rainforest shaman in a TED talk I saw recently said that we need to fill the internal emptiness, not with rampant consumerism, but to understand and see ourselves and each other. It reminds me of a quote by Adrienne Rich that I had on my wall in my 20s, which says, "Until we understand the assumptions in which we are drenched, we cannot know ourselves." And I wonder, how can we model or inspire full human beingness in a therapeutic relationship if we lack awareness or willingness to address our own internalized racism, etc.? If we are willing to sit in uncomfortable inquiry, pivoting our focus inward with compassion and non-judgment, we can start to notice how the notion of race and racism operates through us at multiple system levels. I'm just going to invite you now to kind of do a small exercise here of just having a think about, when did you first become aware of race in your life? For some of you, might not have thought about this before. So just take a moment to think, when did you first become aware of race? And it doesn't need to be a negative memory or realization. It could be neutral or positive. And now shift and see if you can recall a moment of discomfort around an issue of race. Don't go to a traumatic or shaming memory. Just stick with something that's in the edge of discomfort. And just sit and notice with curiosity what's happening in your body right now as you think of that moment of discomfort. So maybe it's a part of your body or your whole body. It might be a sense of tightening, aching, maybe a change in temperature, maybe a churning. And just staying with that if you can, knowing you can be uncomfortable and safe in this moment. You can still stay connected with yourself and your body while noticing the discomfort. And just notice, is there a core belief sitting beneath this? Just ask mindfully, oh, where did I first hear that? Or what face or image do I associate with that belief? Maybe it came from family or media. Oh, that's interesting. Not trying to change it, not trying to resist it, just noticing with curiosity. And as that awareness comes to the surface, that maybe this isn't your belief and that you've simply taken it on board at an early age when you were an open book. Just notice, does that help to be able to name it as not me or not of me? Does it help to reorient yourself and consciously consider new meanings and possibilities around how you see the world, yourself, your relationships and beliefs? Okay. And so just taking a moment to come back into this space. If that was quite jarring for you, just notice your feet on the ground floor being supported by Mother Earth. Maybe feeling back of a chair against your back. Know that you are supported and safe. Okay, and now moving on. Resmaa Menakem is a wonderful Black American trauma therapist I came across in America. He provides valuable insight about racism as a collective, intergenerational racialized trauma of our nervous systems, carried down epigenetically through the generations in our body cells, like a contagious virus lurking in our bloodstream that creates an automatic stress response of flight, fight, and freeze. This turns up in bodies as other traumas do, as anxiety, stress, hypervigilance, or shutdown. Bodies of colour experience racialised trauma as chronically raw, a daily assault daily on the body, a wearing down of the body and nervous system at multiple levels, an accumulation of daily microaggressions and discrimination, through to the white knee of authority on the neck, causing direct bodily violence or even death, such as we witnessed with George Floyd. White bodies experience a racialised trauma too, but very differently, as a fear of bodies of colour, a chronic anxiety, and a defensiveness, a numbness or dissociation from the body, and a sense of our culture. And this was a big aha moment for me to revisit my Pākehā notions of my history and realise that my ancestors fled Europe along with 50 million others, and that has been passed down in me. Resmaa recommends that we heal this trauma with 3 to 10 years of embodied racial practice, which is a lot. His book, My Grandmother's Hands, which I've put on the screen here, is full of really useful body practices which distinguish for people who have white bodies or black bodies or are in the police, given the particular issues they have in the United States. And in terms of his ideas of embodied racial practice being an ongoing thing, I found it very useful. I'm very grateful. There's a climate activist group in the United States who offer an online weekly practice, albeit it is 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning here, to just kind of have that collective sharing and opening of our hearts and minds and addressing our awareness of race. So step 2, talking about compassion as another important element here, and self-compassion too. Mihi ana to Henare and Gina in the first week of the evaluation were talking about aroha and te ao Māori concepts of well-being and healing. Very similar vein here to this. So Tara Brach, who is a white American psychologist and Buddhist, who has lots of online free meditations and things, says we each have racist conditioning. Being anti-racist means having the courage, honesty, caring and dedication to uproot that conditioning in ourselves and in the world. And having practiced Tara's rain meditation for years, I realized I was coming back full circle to how Hakomi as a mindful body-centered psychotherapy could be an effective anti-racism tool for both individual and collective healing. And I've just found this whole concept of, the fact that we all each have racist conditioning really helpful to free up my energy as a Pākehā holding white privilege, to help move beyond the paralysis and guilt and shame to find a constructive path forward. And so this is how I came to think of the pilot workshops of doing anti-racism workshops for Pākehā. As we know from Bessel van der Kolk's book, The Body Keeps Score, the issues are in the tissues. And my Hakomi teacher, Paris Williams, summarises it well in his advertising of his upcoming trauma therapy training, if you're interested, saying there's an increasing recognition over the past few decades in the neuroscience and within the field of trauma therapy that psychological trauma is primarily held within the body and nervous system. Working directly with the body is therefore key to resolving entrenched trauma conditions, and that a particular attitude of open curiosity to one's present experience, i.e. mindfulness, is an extremely helpful component to recovering from these conditions. But the pathway forward is through, not around. So this is something we spent a bit of time dealing with in the pilot workshops of Pākehā, pointing out that as much as we want to be able to think our way out of racism, actually only 10% of our brain functioning is in a logical space. The other 90%, as we know, is reactive. It's the old survival brain. And so the value of mindfulness in observing body sensations of comfort and learning to sit in safety and yet discomfort is that it increases compassion for self and others. And there's evidence that this reduces unconscious bias because it slows our brains down from automatically thinking of them and us and more of a we are together. It really helps us to create a sense of emotional regulation and resilience and healing. As the earlier exercise, I think if we can learn to sit in discomfort and realize new truths come to the surface. And it therefore helps us to nudge our growth, being on that growth edge and better able to act. And mindfulness is something you can do on your own or guide a client, or as I've discovered through Zoom, reach a much wider group of people. So pilot workshops, I'm new to all of this. I'm still learning, but I realised that this serendipitously created this ideal opportunity in terms of my background and skill set. It's very much a mix of the head and the heart and spirit. It lends itself naturally to working with groups of Pākehā to unpack and unlearn internalized racial trauma and privilege and explore notions of history, identity, and culture. And I think I do have time here. I'm just going to stop this. I'm going to share with you a short video with Juliet Batten, who is a retired psychotherapist and a ritual maker. And she talks about some of the issues that also we were discussed in the pilot workshops. So let me see if I can get this right. It's just for a few minutes. Here we go.
I hear Pākehā with these agonising questions: am I appropriating? Am I stealing? Well, those questions arise when we're empty. We can ask Maori to supply our spiritual void, our spiritual emptiness. And that's colonising again, in a way. I was an artist, full-time artist. Then I became a full-time writer that I still am, and I recently retired from psychotherapy. Since I turned 70, I started online teaching the sacred art of ritual to help people connect with the earth more deeply. Hello, I'm Juliet Batten. I'm setting up an altar here. You want to bring in symbols that have life energy in them. Ritual is about bringing the magic back into life. In the late 70s, in feminism, we were really doing analyses which were about how structures support certain forms of oppression. And then, of course, Maori women were involved in feminism, and they started saying, well, you white people with your structures, you're oppressing us. Then we started having anti-racism workshops. And the anti-racism work, it just filtered into everything I did. There's a shock when you first find out how colonisation has affected and still affects Maori. Not only me, but most of my friends, we just felt so guilty. We didn't actually do those bad things personally. It was our people who did it, but we are part of the institutions and the consequences. We participate in the privilege that was gained from those actions. And in the end, we have to take responsibility. We can't change the past, but we can change the future starting from today. I think of them as different layers of work, the anti-racism work. One layer is really the political, economic work, and there's the social health work, and then there's the cultural layer, and this is where my work lies. I teach ritual work to help people feel more connected with the land. When we're grounded in who we are, that's when we're better able to relate to those who are different from us. All the stories are coming out now about Captain Cook's encounters with Maori, and we need, as Pākehā, to hear the stories and be strong enough to feel the pain. To be strong enough to feel the pain, we need to be strong in our own identity. I think so many Pākehā, we're up in our heads. There has been a separation from the old earth-based spirituality. There's also a huge dislocation from the land. When the white settlers came to Aotearoa, they brought with them the Gregorian calendar and they just imposed it on this land, and they didn't even notice that they were 6 months out of alignment. And so they didn't notice that they were celebrating Christmas and summer solstice. Whereas the Christmas festival, for example, it's a winter solstice festival, and it belongs in June in the middle of winter. And that comes from a certain mindset of superiority and certainly not able to understand Indigenous culture. So how do Pākehā come into reciprocal relationship with Māori when so many feel bereft and they say, I'm empty, I don't have anything, I go to the marae, Māori are so full of spirituality. If we come into a relationship feeling that we're empty and we need to be filled up, we're going to take. We're going to say to the others, fill me up, give me what I haven't got. Now that's not coming into relationship of giving and receiving, a reciprocal relationship. I can relate to so many of the Maori spiritual practices, but they're not mine from my heritage. If I dig deep enough into my ancestry, what I find is my Celtic ancestors were closely connected with the land. We too celebrated the harvest.
I'll just pause there, and it continues for another couple of minutes. I think it just kind of gives a useful kind of overview. Oh, we lost the... No, it's the wrong one. All right, it's my snip thing instead of the screens. Oh, here we go. This one. Okay. And so moving to, why is it not working? Okay, let's look. The anti-racism workshops themselves. This was a pilot we did in November and December last year. They were weekly evening online workshops of between like 90 minutes and 2 hours online. Did this through Tamaki treaty workers. And so we had about 8 Pākehā participants, ranged quite a lot in age, recruited them from Tamaki treaty workers, like long-time educators in Te Tiriti, and some Facebook groups that I'm part of in terms of working around decolonisation, for example. And they, like my background and like this presentation today, we had that mix of head information discussion, heart, mindfulness exercises, and action. So that challenge to self-reflect and commit to what kind of changes could we do. And I did this with the wonderful Rachel Hendren, who I've actually seen in earlier weeks for this, but I don't know if she's here today. So a mutual acquaintance put us in touch, and she was doing some work in anti-racism. Her background is in a different kind of psychotherapy to what I know about, but and so we marched forward with that, and it went really well overall. Here's a few examples of participant feedback and what they liked. In terms of particularly sharing stories in small breakout groups, having the same people each time gave that sense of safety for them. What they called the relaxing stuff, the mindfulness, the guided meditations and so on, and role modeling, that calmness they found really useful, and also that balance of head and heart through the slides and using prompts and chat and things like that. In terms of change or improvements, I don't know if you could change it in the sense that initially they found it very tiring and their anxiety was obvious, particularly in the first 1 or 2 workshops. And so it was like very clear that Pākehā defensiveness was happening in that play. And so they really felt that need for more security, guidance, instruction, scaffolding. They were just quite scared of getting it wrong or not being perfect. And so it required quite a lot of encouragement to say, look, whatever is, just let yourself feel it. And we had some, tech issues using Zoom like this for the first time for many of us, and it was a little slow and awkward. I didn't know if this was a Pākehā thing or not. Quite awkward, sort of jumping in and sort of engaging on Zoom and introducing themselves, which I found quite in contrast with similar kind of things that I'd done in the United States through webinars. Oh, no, oops. All right, I'm jumping ahead. How do I get out of it? No. Oh, sorry. I'm losing track of my slides here. In terms of my reflections and learnings about this, I found it pretty nerve-wracking initially because everything we did was somewhat familiar to me, but also really new. So, for example, I was an experienced facilitator, but not online. So learning how to use Zoom, which as you can see, I'm still learning. The mindfulness practice I've done with individuals and face-to-face, but not online or in a group setting. And so, although I wasn't applying Hakomi directly, because I'm not qualified as a therapist, adapting and blending Hakomi principles and tools in this kind of format was kind of new for me. And similarly, working alongside Rachel, I hadn't met before or worked with, so that was a great unknown going into it. As that worked out, we worked really well, I think, in terms of having complementary skills. So this very much was a pilot in terms of giving us an opportunity to learn and grow from testing these things out. Overall, I think it went really well. We had no dropouts, and as feedback shows, participants rated it positively, and I think some of them had started from quite a skeptical place as well. So, and they were much more familiar and comfortable with a head-based kind of treaty education format. So for them to overcome that, to get used to the unfamiliarity of this format, and then come out and sort of be saying things, like, this really felt at home. It was much better than I expected. I normally wouldn't do something like this, but hey, I will come back if you do more. So that was really encouraging. So I mentioned before, it really confirmed Pākehā discomfort. There's lots of deflection and defensiveness, which I'm finding quite funny to see now in action, because once your eyes open to what's going on in terms of that broader white supremacy ideology, you start to kind of see it's not personal, and it's pretty predictable actually. Really just emphasised for me the importance of creating the safety bubble first. So as we know, the unconscious won't reveal itself until it feels safe. And so I was just really delighted that how effective the mindful body-centered strategies were, and they really just within a very short time started to see building resilience and confidence and courage in the participants. And like Hakomi, it was very relational. But it takes practice, and we were all imperfect and learning to come to grips with that, and there were no easy or quick wins, and so the work continues. I had hoped actually today to be rolling out a full program by now and be talking to you about the ongoing experience of this, but unfortunately Rachel stepped back from this, and so I am looking for someone else to co-facilitate. So any of you feel moved to do this work, it's about one evening a week. It would be great to have a team to continue this work. And in the meantime, I'm co-facilitating an online discussion of the book Imagining Decolonisation, with less opportunity to provide some of the psychotherapy, the body-centered work, although I do offer a guided meditation beforehand. And that's proving very popular. So we had over 800 people want to sign up for that book discussion, and we said, no, we have to limit that to 50. So I'm just going to finish with just talking you through the Hakomi principles. So there are 5 principles here. It's a mindful body-oriented psychotherapy that is a mix of Western science and sort of Eastern philosophy that was created by Ron Kurtz and another team in California in the 1970s. And so the first one, unity, it's about interconnection, really. It's recognizing we are living organic systems with parts organized into a whole, which are interconnected both within and with the environment and the universe, because we are all source energy. And so the harm causing the climate crisis is harming us. The second one, mind, body, spirit, holism, is the recognition that the beliefs that we have about ourselves and the world are not just in our minds, but in our bodies and hearts and spirit too. In terms of mindfulness, it's about being aware in the present moment, connecting with the inner world with an alert, loving kindness and open curiosity to simply notice what arises in the present experience. And when our unconscious feels safe, it reveals itself in felt body sensations, which you hopefully have connected with a little bit with today. And with study, we can begin to understand how we organize meaning around these experiences. And this enables a reorganization of core beliefs for transformation. So mindfulness isn't about relaxing or trying to force something to happen. It's very much in the Buddhist or meditative tradition that Tara Brach uses, for example, in the RAIN meditation. So RAIN, R-A-I-N, is an acronym that stands for recognize what is through observation and tracking of body sensations. A, for acknowledging the discomfort with loving kindness. I, investigating with a detached curiosity. And N, nourishing the inner child or pain with self-compassion. So the fourth one is organicity. It's this honoring the inherent body wisdom and intelligence of the body and its natural impulse towards growth and change. And finally, a sort of a compassionate non-violence. Again, not trying to force change. We accept what is with compassion and non-judgment. And so by supporting defenses, rather than trying to judge or shut them down or unpack them, allowing the shadow side of ourselves, such as white supremacy beliefs, to be heard, that paradoxically allows for release. And so, I've lost my key takeaways. There we go, key takeaways. We're all interconnected as beings, as equally, as I said at the top, the white supremacy connects the ideologies that lead us to having climate crisis and racism. The challenge is learning how to sit in safety and discomfort, and thinking about how mindful body-centered healing is a really effective tool for healing racialized trauma and potentially climate trauma and other traumas as well. That the challenge for us is ongoing practice and action. And ko au te awa, ko te awa ko au. This is a proverb from the Whanganui River. I am the river is me. And that's, another picture of my connection with Te Awa Kairangi here, the river just a couple of minutes away. So just to go back, I just wanted to challenge you to think about what might you take from this today going forward as actions in your life. It might be a self-reflection, a willingness to challenge your own privileges, to maybe start doing some kind of body mindfulness practice to provide and receive collective support and to provide some sort of solidarity and good treaty partners, for example, with waka oranga. Maybe you want to infuse some of this into your work. There are some upcoming trainings, funny enough. Or maybe it's about thinking about how do I role model values that I take into the room, because we can't just, as I said before, shut off the different elements of white supremacy. We are infused with them. We bring them with wherever we go. Or maybe it's about taking up the challenge that others have laid down of practicing social environmental justice oriented psychotherapy. Stepping into the outer realms and realizing there is no distinction between personal and political. Maybe it's about breaking cultural silences. So here are some resources if you're interested. You know, can Cameron take a shot? So I warmly recommend My Grandmother's Hands, this book by Resmaa Menakem. It's got lots of great exercises in it that you can use. And there's various interviews with him online, which are really interesting. There's also a great online interview by Sounds True between Tara Brach and Jeffrey Rutstein, who's a Hakomi therapist, talking about bringing mindfulness to psychotherapy and social change. There's a very recently, a very young woman, 16-year-old, she's just wonderful. She's set up a website called Check Your Pākehā Privilege, and that's got lots of resources on it. I've been working on a web page, but she's beaten me to it, so go Helena. There's a great article by Max Harris in E Tangata about Pākehā defensiveness with local examples. And on Facebook, I mean, there's just lots of groups. Te Mo Mātiki Mai Association, for example, is one of the decolonisation groups. There's like 2,000 people having, you know, just really interesting conversations and engagement around some of these issues. And of course, you know, there's lots of online anti-racism webinars there. In terms of some upcoming events, if you're interested in finding out more about Hakomi, there's actually a primer for Hakomi, funnily enough, by Hauko Weiss, who's one of the co-founders of it, which starts tomorrow. It's probably not a very user-friendly time because he lives in Mallorca, but there's a 2-day primer there, or there's other ones happening in June or December. So I've just put up a bit of a link there for you. Jules Morgaine is the lead New Zealand trainer for Hakomi, and she's offering a 3-day workshop in Nelson in May around relearning wholeness. So that won't be a training, it'll be an experiential one, and I just really warmly recommend you to do a Hakomi workshop. It's a really beautiful experience. As I mentioned before, Paris Williams is running some trauma therapy trainings. They're coming up in Wellington, Hamilton and Dunedin. You can check out the Hakomi New Zealand website for more information. And there's another thing I just came across online. I don't know how good it is or whatever, but there's an online course for how to become anti-racist psychotherapists. So I've put the link up there for as well. And if you have any questions, you want to follow up, interest in being involved in any of this work, Mahi, that would be fantastic. There's my email address, shinewithclaire@gmail.com. And so I guess I'll close down the slides now and open plenty of time, hopefully, to talk about both my presentation today and across the broader conference, thinking about hopefully what have we learned and where next. Thank you. All done.